Ganapati Muni and his followers made Sri Ramana known to a wide circle in India. At first, Ganapati Muni stayed with the Maharshi and lived close by in the mango tree cave where he practiced his tapas. Over the next 3 weeks, to express his gratitude, he wrote a hymn of 1,000 verses in praise of the goddess Uma, or Shakti, the divine mother of the universe, whom he venerated above all others. From January to March 1908, he stayed with Ramana and a number of disciples in the Pachayaman temple. There, the recently finished masterpiece of 1,000 verses to Uma Sahasram was solemnly recited. Ganapati Muni strove earnestly to deepen his meditation and to practice self-inquiry as the Maharshi had taught him. But he still believed in his mission to renew India and also in the effectiveness of mantra japa. So, he once again felt restless and drawn to leave. At the end of March, he went to Sri Ramana and asked him in parting, "Is the seeking of the source of I-thought sufficient for the accomplishment of all my aims, or is mantra dhyana, mantra meditation, needed?" Ramana answered, "The former would suffice." Then he gave him the following advice for his future life: "Place your burden at the feet of the Lord of the universe, who is ever victorious and accomplishes everything. Remain all the time steadfast in the heart, in the transcendental absolute. God knows the past, present, and future. He will determine the future for you and accomplish the work. What is to be done will be done at the proper time. Don't worry. Abide in the heart and surrender your acts to the divine." First, Ganapati Muni returned to Tiruvotiyur near Madras, where he used to live. There, the world of learning reserved for him an enthusiastic reception. Then he withdrew to the Ganapati temple to practice his spiritual exercises, where he one day had a strange experience. It was the 18th day of his tapas when he had a vision of the Maharshi, who suddenly came in, sat near him, and placed his hand on his head. He felt a strong stream of energy flooding through his body. It is interesting that at the same time, Ramana also had a strange experience, which he later described to Ganapati Muni as follows: "I lay down, but I was not in samadhi. I suddenly felt my body carried up higher and higher till all objects disappeared and all around me was one vast mass of white light. Then suddenly the body descended and objects began to appear. The idea occurred to me that I was at Tiruvotiyur. I was on a high road which went along. On one side and some distance removed from it was a Ganapati temple. I went in and talked, but what I said or did, I do not recollect. Suddenly I woke up and found myself lying in Virupaksha Cave. Ganapati Muni spent his whole life moving around and was often accompanied by his wife Visalakshi, who also led a spiritual life. At many places, he gave lectures about Sanskrit literature and explained his ideas on social reforms, which he considered to be very progressive, gave interpretations of the Vedas, spoke about spiritual matters, and was invited to various events, as he was very much in demand as a speaker. But again and again he would withdraw to Tiruvannamalai for short periods. On these occasions he would mostly live in the mango tree cave, where he performed tapas and visited his master frequently. During his absence, he wrote letters to the Maharshi which testified to his deep devotion. On 31st March 1931, he said in his letter from Sirsi, "Bungiva, though I may have 1,000 desires, they all are set at rest within the cave of the heart, scorched by the effulgence of your benevolent look. Only one of them sprouts forth, raising its head even now. Let my impure ego perish. My Lord, grant me the fulfillment of my aspiration." And on 14th of April 1931, his letter ended as follows: "I know that the perfect fulfillment of all my aspirations is to be accomplished only at the proximity of Bhagavan's feet. I am awaiting that auspicious hour. For the present, may this devotee, staying at some distance, appear very near to Bhagavan's heart. Lord, you reside within my heart and I at your feet. You are my master and director. I am your servant, your instrument to do your work. The relationship between them remained close all their lives. Sri Ramana called Ganapati Muni by the pet name Nayana, which his disciples also used. The Telugu word Nayana is used to address one's father as well as one's disciple and one's child. In return, Ganapati Muni's erudition made much literature, in particular Sanskrit literature, accessible to the Maharshi. Ramana relied totally upon Nayana in the matter and finally himself started to learn Sanskrit by reading Shankara's Vivekachudamani in Tamil and Sanskrit in parallel. In 1915, he wrote his first verse in Sanskrit. This verse contains the essence of his teaching and was included in Ganapati Muni's Ramana Gita. In the interior of the heart cave, Brahman alone shines in the form of the Atman with direct immediacy as I. Enter into the heart with questing mind or by diving deep within or through control of breath and abide in the Atman. 2 years later, Ramana composed his 5 stanzas to Sri Arunachala Pancharatna in Sanskrit. In 1927, he rendered his own work of 30 verses Upadesa Undiyar, the essence of instruction, into Sanskrit as Upadesa Saram. He sent his translation to Ganapati Muni to be checked and corrected, and Ganapati wrote a commentary on it. Upadesa Saram is one of the most important of the Maharshi's works. Ramana also translated it into Telugu and Malayalam. His famous Reality in 40 verses, Uladu Napadu, is also one of his most important works and was translated into Sanskrit by Ganapati Muni. Again, the English translations can all be found in the collected works. Ganapati Muni died in 1936, aged 58, in Kharagpur, West Bengal, where his devotees had built an ashram for him. When Ramana was informed about his death by telegram, he said, deeply moved and with tears in his eyes, "Where can we find another like him?" Subchapter: Children, Devotees and Visitors. Though Sri Ramana did not speak in the first years of his stay in the Virupaksha Cave, many children climbed up the hill to visit him. They came on their own initiative and sat silently near him for long periods. They often used to bring something to eat with them, and he also received his share. Sometimes they brought their dolls and played at weddings. For the yearly light festival, Deepavali, they brought crackers and Ramana set them off together with them. He also played marbles with the boys. In the meantime, many new followers had joined Sri Ramana. Amongst them was Echamal, a simple woman who had lost her husband and both her children, which had made her life unbearable. Someone told her that a young saint was living in Tiruvannamalai. She immediately undertook the journey to see him. She stayed in his presence for about 1 hour without a word being spoken. She felt the mental anguish vanishing until the pain disappeared, to be replaced by inner peace. She settled down in Tiruvannamalai and took a vow that she would only eat after she had served her master. From 1907 onwards, until her death in 1945, she brought him a meal every day. In 1908, as a boy of 12, T.K. Sundaresa Iyer had come to Ramana and remained faithful to him till the end. He writes in his reminiscences, "Had you seen him in those days, you would hardly have taken him for a mere human being. His figure was a statue of burnished gold. He simply sat and rarely spoke. The words he spoke on any day could easily be counted. He was an enchanting personality who shed a captivating luster on all, and a life-giving current flowed from him, charging all those nearby, while his sparkling eyes irrigated those around him with the nectar of his being. And yet one day The young man was finally overcome by doubts. One day I wondered why I was visiting him at all. What was the use? There seemed to be no inner advancement. Going up the hill was meaningless toil. I decided to end my visits on the hill. For 100 days exactly I did not see Bhagavan. On the 101st day I could suffer no longer, and I ran to Skandashram above Virupaksha Cave. Bhagavan saw me climbing, got up and came forward to meet me. When I fell at his feet, I could not restrain myself and burst out in tears. I clung to them and would not get up. Bhagavan pulled me up and asked, "It is over 3 months since I saw you. Where were you?" I told him how I thought that seeing him was of no use. "All right," he said, "maybe it is of no use, so what? You felt the loss, did you not?" Then I understood that we did not go to him for profit, but because away from him there was no life for us. The Englishman Frank H. Humphreys was the first Western disciple who came to Ramana in January 1911. He reports about his visit. "For half an hour I looked him in the eyes, which never changed their expression of deep contemplation. I began to realize somewhat that the body is the temple of the Holy Ghost. I could only feel his body was not the man. It was the instrument of God, merely a sitting motionless corpse from which God was radiating terrifically. My own sensations were indescribable. The story of how Sri Ramana kept his identity hidden from a visitor is well known. One day when Palaniswami was not there, Sri Ramana started to build a stone platform in front of Virupaksha Cave so that visitors could sit there more comfortably. He collected some stones and bricks and mixed some wet mud. He had a bricklayer's trowel in his dirty hand, was wearing only a loincloth, and was sweating when a visitor came. He asked him where the Swami was, but Ramana answered, "Swami has just gone out somewhere." The visitor waited, but as no Swami returned, he went away without having achieved what he had come for. On the way back he met Echamal, who was on her way up to the cave to bring the meal. She told him that he had come across none other than Ramana himself. Later, Echamal asked Ramana if it was right for him to give the visitor such wrong information, but Maharshi replied, "Do you want me to go about with a bell round my neck, announcing, 'I am the Swami,' or to have a label on my forehead that I am the Swami?" There are other similar incidents in which Ramana denied himself. Subchapter: Sannyasins and Sadhus. In people's eyes, Sri Ramana led the life of a sannyasin, but he never had any formal initiation. Once a disciple of the present Shankaracharya of Sringeri tried to persuade Ramana to be initiated into sannyasa. Ramana refused, but the sannyasin was stubborn, arguing for more than 3 hours. Then he went away to get all the things needed for performing the ceremony of initiation, saying Ramana should think it over in the meantime. Shortly after the sannyasin left, an old man who Ramana had never seen before came to the Virupaksha Cave carrying a bundle of Sanskrit books. The old man asked permission to leave the books there for a while and to pick them up later on his way back. Ramana leafed through them with interest. The first book he picked up was the Arunachala Puranam. It fell open at the following verse: "Those who reside within the radius of 3 yojanas, 30 miles of this place, Arunachala, even if they have not had initiation, shall by my supreme decree attain liberation, free from all attachments." He copied this out on a slip of paper, laid the book back and closed his eyes. When he later looked up, the books had disappeared. Finally, the sannyasin returned. Sri Ramana gave him the piece of paper, and he was forced to accept that for Maharshi, no initiation was needed. Some of the other sadhus who lived on the mountain watched Sri Ramana's increasing fame with suspicion and envy. An elderly sadhu felt particularly envious and wanted to drive Ramana out of the Virupaksha Cave. He threw some rocks over a ledge at the young Swami sitting under it, but they missed. When the sadhu tried it again, Ramana got up and caught him. But the sadhu only laughed and said that it was meant only as an innocent joke. Without rebuking him, Ramana let him go. A certain Balananda was particularly intrusive. One day he said to Ramana, "I will say I am your guru and get money from the visitors. It is no loss to you, so don't contradict me." Ramana did not reply, and when visitors came, Balananda said to them, "This young Swami is my disciple. Yes, give the child some sweets." Once Balananda sat beneath Ramana and gazed steadily into his eyes in order to put him into nirvikalpa, samadhi, a samadhi without bodily awareness. But all that happened was that Balananda fall asleep, Ramana got up and went away with his disciples. Subchapter at the Tortoise Rock. In 1912, Ramana had a kind of second death experience. One morning, around 10 a.m., he was on his way back from the temple tank at the Pachayaman shrine together with his companions, Palaniswami, Vasudeva Sastri, and others. There they had taken an oil bath. The sun was by now burning hot, and the ascent to Virupaksha Cave was causing additional strain. When they came near the Tortoise Rock, which is a huge boulder on the path, Ramana was suddenly overcome by a bodily weakness. He supported himself against the rock, his skin turned dark, and his companions thought he was going to die. Vasudeva Sastri reports, "While all else stood at a distance weeping, I suddenly embraced him. I was a bachelor at the time and had the liberty to do so. No one else used to touch Swami's body. He was in that state for about 10 minutes, I think, and then gained consciousness. I jumped about with joy. 'Why this weeping? You thought I was dead. If I am to die, will I not tell you beforehand?' Bhagavan said, consoling us." Ramana described his experience as follows: "Suddenly the view of nature in front of me disappeared and got covered up like a sheet of white cloth. All around me was the view of the white cloth. My head was reeling. The circulation of blood and the beating of the heart stopped, and my body began to get dark in color, same as what happens to a dead body. And as that slowly increased, Vasu thought that I was really dead and began to weep and embraced me. The change in my body's color, Vasu's embrace, the shivering of his body, and the talks of the others around me, I was conscious of all these. I was also conscious of my hands and feet getting chill and the stopping of the beats of my heart, but I had no fear in me. The flow of my thoughts and the consciousness of myself were not lost, and I was not worried about my body's condition. I sat cross-legged in the Padmasanam pose, lotus seat. I was not leaning on the rock behind. The circulation of blood stopped, but the sitting posture remained intact. All that lasted for about 15 minutes. Suddenly energy permeated throughout my body. The circulation of blood and the beating of the heart commenced. The black color of my body disappeared. I began to perspire profusely from all pores in my body. I opened my eyes, got up and said, "Come on, let us go." We then reached the Virupaksha Cave without any further incidents. It is possible that this event allowed Ramana's final transition to a normal outer life. One thing is certain, around this time his life started to follow a normal path again. This development had been gradual and had started to set in the years leading up to this event. He had started to react to visitors and had slowly started speaking again, although still very little. He ate and drank regularly and took care of his body. He performed all kinds of domestic work. He also carved many walking sticks, which he then gave away, and likewise spoons and cups which he carved out of coconut shells and then polished so long that they started to shine. He developed a good deal of practical ability in daily life, became an extraordinarily good and painstaking cook, a talented architect, and in all that he did was extremely economical and tidy. Increasingly, his life followed a precise timetable in which everything had its fixed place. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe to Biography Central channel and share with your friends. This will help us reach more viewers.